Welcome to Growing a Dental Practice. All you need to know to start, run, and grow your dental practice. Each week, dental marketeer Mike Hennon chats with Doctors Lewis Butler and Sahil Tucker about their journey as principal dentists. Plus, interviews with prominent and upcoming figures in the world of dentistry and beyond. Now, here's your host, Mike Hennon.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hennon, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Sahil Tucker. And today is all about why you started your dental practice. So, when people think about buying a practice or starting a practice, they get very excited about, the location, the logo, the uniforms, that kind of exciting stuff. But they very often overlook why they're starting it. And as you'll see, why you're starting a practice is really important to sort of seeing out your journey. So Sahil is perfect for this because he has only recently started his squat practice. So Sahil, sort of from a high level perspective, why have you started your practice?
Firstly, Mike, thanks for having me on. Hello, everyone. And thanks for tuning in again, I guess. So the question you asked me is, why have I started a dental practice? So there were a lot of things that I didn't like in my role as an associate. There were a lot of things that I didn't like when I was working, in the NHS or in mixed practice. There were a lot of things that I didn't like in terms of the way the practice was run, the way the staff were treated, the way we were treated as associates. And of course, when you're a young associate, the grass is always greener. And that's what sort of prompted me to look elsewhere. So I wouldn't say initially that my idea was to start a squat practice. My idea was to own a practice, full stop. And gradually that developed over several months after making that decision that I wanted to leave the practice. So with regards to that, the idea developed from, I suppose, a combination of the things that I didn't like. So, for example, I didn't like that I wasn't allowed to use the materials that I wanted to use. I was at the time, and I still do spend a lot on my education. And, on the one hand, I'm learning how to do all sorts of fancy things. And on the other hand, there's someone who doesn't really understand, what you're trying to achieve. And it's just a computer says no answer. So there was an element of control from a clinical freedom perspective. There was also an element of things that patients were saying to us. So they would say to us, I don't like how dental practices smell. I don't like the fact that you're not open on weekends. I don't like the fact that things are rushed or stuff like that. And, and I didn't like those things either, in terms of, I didn't like the fact that working in a mixed practice, now everyone will say, you're not limited for time, which of course you're not limited for time, but realistically, it is a business at the end of the day, and we don't work for free. We work to make to do good, but also at the end of the day, we're trying to make a living as well. And so time does factor into it. And that was a big part of why I wanted to move out of being an associate, but particularly out of NHS practice. Because reflecting back on, working in a fair manner, in terms of fair remuneration, working in a way where we can provide the best to our patients, where we can provide stuff that's, state of the art or in line with all the new ways of thinking. I didn't see a future for myself on the NHS, and I think a lot of people will resonate with that. With regards to owning a practice or starting a practice, I guess it sort of developed from the type of practice I wanted to work in. So I wanted to make sure that I utilised, the skills of the wider dental team. So, eventually bring in therapists and hygienists. And I was just speaking to someone about this earlier today, actually, to lead checkups, I guess, lead examinations, and utilize this. So therapists can have quite a broad scope of practice, and they can do a lot of dentistry, which is, would be considered routine, and it allows dentists to focus on more complex things. And, I wanted to integrate that into my practice. So that influenced setting up from scratch. I also looked at, staffing situations in my previous practice. And there were people that I liked and people I didn't like so much. And I think, once I realized that, stage one was I want to leave and I want to own a practice. After that, which was I don't want to be an NHS practice. So then you've really only got two options. You either buy a private practice or you set one up, and taking on someone else's staff who may or may not get on with you in terms of the style of work, the speed of work, the quality of work wasn't really something that I wanted to get involved in. And I think, the type of dentistry I wanted to do in terms of workflows, in terms of using the wider dental team, the type of experience I wanted my patients to have in terms of, being as undentist-like as possible, quite, enjoyable, relaxed, informative, pain-free. And I didn't want people's misconceptions and preconceptions to get in the way of that. And it should, I wanted to put my stamp on everything from the start, and that's why I felt that starting a dental practice was the right way forward, rather than buying one from even a private one from someone else.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So it sounds like very much that your decision was sort of led by the fact that you didn't like where you were and how it was run, the fact that you wanted to deliver a different kind of dentistry. And obviously change the way that sort of, and we mentioned this on the website and that kind of thing, you want to sort of change the perception of dentistry. Were you ever influenced by status or money? Was the Lamborghini tempting?
The Lamborghini was tempting, but I would have stayed as an associate. Because I think okay, let's put it both ways. I think my income has taken a hit, moving from being an associate to being a practice owner. In terms of how much of a hit, it's actually not too bad, because dentistry is in high demand at the moment, and we're doing better than expected. And I think I'm pleasantly surprised on that front. But also, it's not the fact that you're earning well, it's the fact that actually you've got a business behind you. And at the moment, I'm a sole, I'm the sole dentist in the practice, as me and a hygienist. And if I were to break an arm, then as an associate, I've just got to think about, oh, crap, how do I pay the next month's bill, or the month after, the next couple of months worth of bill? And that's relatively low outlay. As a practice owner, you've got to think about, oh, crap, if I break an arm, I've got to cover a lot more. So it doesn't matter that I'm, earning better than expected. The level of responsibility has increased. So would I say finance in the short term? I don't think. I love a good spreadsheet. Anyone who knows me and is listening, they will be aware of that. So I was very on top of the numbers from, within a few months of knowing that I wanted to own a squat practice. I knew what the numbers would look like, and I knew what I'd be taking home every month. And I knew, I'm a fairly low maintenance person. So I didn't think I needed to set aside a lot of money. And I was, I didn't have any dreams of, owning a Lamborghini by month 3. Do I think that will happen eventually? Possibly not a Lamborghini, because the current trajectory, I've done my back before I can afford a Lamborghini. But I think eventually it will. That's part of the why. Was I motivated by finance? Part of the drive in me is to be financially free, and part of the drive in me is to do clinical dentistry purely because I enjoy it, not because I have to do it. Do I think that that's going to happen tomorrow? No. Do I think that's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years? I think almost certainly, yes. And that was, that played into the fact that I chose to set up quite a big practice. We've got 5 surgeries. We're about to fit out our second. The first one's pretty much full, or will be full in the next few weeks. And it was just looking at the numbers and thinking, right, this is, surgery 1 will just about pay the bills. Surgery 2 will cover the wages and a bit, some of the nice stuff that we like to have, the tech and all that kind of stuff. The retirement fund is surgery 3, 4, and 5. And that's why we've got surgery 3, 4, and 5, because that will eventually bring a passive income where I can take my foot off the gas, I can focus on other projects. So in the short term, to summarize that question, was I motivated by short-term gain? No, I've always been quite a long-term person. Am I motivated by long-term gain? Again, well, yes, absolutely. That's part of the fun of owning a business, part of the reward of taking that risk. But then, is it the only way to make money in dentistry? I don't think so. I think if you're one of these super associates, there's no doubt that they will be better off financially than I ever will be. But then I'm not them, and probably they're not me. So this is what I felt was good for me. In terms of status, owning a dental practice, I mean, realistically, if you've got a bit of money, don't the banks just lend willy-nilly for an NHS-backed practice? So I don't think there's a status in owning a practice per se. I think, obviously...
Did you ever have was there any pressure from family to you become a dentist? Was there any pressure from family to become a practice owner?
There wasn't. It was... I think as a family, we've always been quite entrepreneurial. So there's always that, it's not pressure, I guess, it's sort of expectation that you will do something entrepreneurial. I mean, being self-employed as a dentist is reasonably entrepreneurial. You're in charge of what services you offer. You're in charge of, to an extent, how much you charge for them. But I wouldn't say that there was a pressure to own a practice, something that I'd always wanted to do. And it was something that I think my family had been there behind me all throughout the process. So to answer that question, no, there wasn't, but they were strongly for it.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So you've covered really nicely kind of why you started practice. Now, I'm going to go a step further and say, why is it important that you know why you started practice? Like, why is that so critical to the journey?
So I really wanted to put my stamp over something in terms of have the practice reflect what I am like a person. Also have the practice reflect what I perceive to be a good experience. And I, again, going back to starting versus buying, I didn't think that buying a practice would fulfill all of that. So, for example, I've got a fairly relaxed, friendly demeanor. I think, should I have taken over another practice, I'm not in charge of the associates that were hired. There's a headache there. I'm not in charge of the nursing, the receptionists that were hired, and there's a bit of a headache there. So I think, part of our values as a practice is to be friendly, open, straight talking, blunt to a fault sometimes. So which some people appreciate, some people they need a little bit of fluffing up, I guess, or wrapping in cotton wool, if you like. But that's something you learn over time. And I like to say stuff how it is. I'm a very sort of, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is how we're going to help you. Look, I understand it's, whatever the problem might be, it's come as a shock sort of thing. But this is what we can do for you. And it's all very black and white. I'm a very, I would say, systematic person. And I think that was quite important, that, we have a practice based on systems. So if we do this, then this. If we do this, then this. And as just taking it aside, there's a book called The Emyth Revisited, which I would highly recommend. And that's something that people who are listening may find inspirational. So going back to that, my point, I wanted it to reflect what we do. I wanted it to reflect the fact that, I'm always learning about something. I like making sure we've got the latest tech, and using that on patients. So that's part of what the open a squat practice.
I was going to say, because you've mentioned in the past that you've had, you're only at the start of your journey, but you've had some dark and difficult days. And you've actually said to me in the past that actually knowing why you're doing it has actually gotten you through it. And I think that actually applies to a lot of businesses, not just sort of dental practices, but knowing why you've set up the business and started the business has kind of, it gets you out of those holes and through those difficult days. Is that right?
I would stand by that. I think knowing the end goal, knowing why you're doing, knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel is really, really important in this process or any other process, really. If you're going to embark on something that's going to take a lot out of you, and yes, the cliched blood, sweat and tears, and greying hair, then you need to know that, the reason why you did it, what the alternative was, and that sort of keeps you going, I guess. And absolutely, there have been times where the stress is. I would compare this a little bit to the stress of dental school, except I think it's actually less than that, because at dental school there's someone else marking the paper. As a practice owner, the buck stops with you, so you are not really answerable to anyone. Yes, there are regulators, but there are regulators in, even as an associate, and it's the same level of stress, but it's a different kind of stress. But I think it's, in hindsight, it's probably more manageable, because if you've got a slightly dodgy employee, it's in your hands, whereas if you've not filled in an exam paper correctly, you're a bit stuffed. So that, things are lower stakes, I would say. There's just a lot of it. So I would say that, it's definitely doable, but you need to know why you're doing it, because otherwise you'll just give up halfway. Or certainly if I didn't know why I was doing it, I would have given up halfway, because you go through a process which, in my case, was years long. And partly because I'm quite a slow person in terms of I make decisions really slowly, but you go through a process that's quite long, and it can get quite frustrating at times. And I think I've said this to you previously, where all of the problems that I've encountered stem from people not doing what they say they will do. So people will take on a job, or they'll agree to do something, and then it won't happen. And if you learn to accept that and learn to have things to mitigate that, then I think you're not going to go far wrong in terms of the process. And sometimes I think in hindsight, probably take on too much, where I can delegate a little bit more. But that's a reflective thing that I've learned, and I'm starting to do a little bit more now. But then, of course, the more you delegate, the more you need to trust people that they'll actually do the job, and then accept that they won't do the job first time or second time, and it will take a few times. But it's coming to terms.
It's going to take time, isn't it? It's going to take time.
Yes, exactly. And, something that, you need to be aware of is, if you're embarking on this process, you're a certain type of person to want to start a business, to do something slightly different. And if you're that kind of person, if other people were like that, they would be doing the exact same thing that you're doing, if that makes sense. So if they were like us, then they would be us. So then I think knowing, understanding and accepting, which I think has taken me longer than I would like to come to terms with, knowing, understanding and accepting that people are not like us, and people are driven by different things, and they have different whys. And that might just be, 9 to 5, coming to work and going home, clocking off at the end of the day. Then that takes away a lot of stress when you come to terms with those facts.
No, that's brilliant. No, I love that. Yeah, that's good. No, that's good. So I think we've covered quite nicely why you started to practice in the first place, why it's important to know that from the off, and how that gets you through. What triggered you to think about why? Like, why didn't you just plow straight into buying practice without a thought? Like, was there a trigger?
why didn't I just plow straight into buying a practice or setting up a practice? Because I'm the kind of person, like, that I will buy a washing machine, but that washing machine will have had 7 or 8 hours worth of research to back that up. I will know that the spin cycle takes 13 minutes and runs at 1400 RPM. I'll know the number of decibels it will produce. And, that's the kind of person I am, unfortunately.
I know that because I've heard this story. I've heard you say that so many times. It's like your go-to story.
You know what? The washing machine we've got downstairs, it took me a long time to buy that. I mean, to be fair, it was the first one I looked at and I thought, that looks like a nice washing machine. Why don't we go for that? Yeah. And then I was like, no, I need to check Curry's. I then need to check, I don't know, John Lewis. I need to check AO.com. Right, I know what model I want. Is this the best deal? Can I get cash back somewhere? So... all of this time, I bought the first washing machine or the second washing machine that I saw. So that's why. But no, on a serious note, I think there are, a couple of things. So I actually saw a TED talk a few years ago by a guy called Simon Sinek, and he's got a book off the back of that, which is quite handily called Start With Why. And it sort of puts things into perspective. It helps you understand your own driving motivations, but it also helps you understand that people don't actually. I'm going to get this wrong now. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So it's a great book. I also started the TED Talk. So the TED Talk was really just empowering, motivational. Just some things just click that mate. You're thinking, oh, that's it. That's what I need to know in order to progress. And essentially, we all think people by what we do and the thing we're offering. But as Simon Sinek puts it, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's why companies like Apple are so phenomenally successful, is because we're not buying the computer or the iPod or the iPhone. They want it to be this brand that sort of challenges the status quo. Their slogan is think differently, and we're buying that. We're not actually buying the device. They could be selling anything. They
could be selling apples.
They could be selling apples for all we know. Yeah, exactly. But they said exactly the same thing as Nokia, or as Nokia used to do, and yet Nokia went out of business and Apple has survived, and they've gone into other areas of tech and stuff. It's because we all understood why Apple existed, but we didn't have a clue what Nokia was doing. Now I feel like I'm picking on Nokia because they are still going, I think, but you get the gist. So yeah, good. I think it's a good resource to bring up. So I think people should definitely read that. It's a good thing to read probably before, if you're on the verge of thinking about buying a practice or starting a practice. It's probably quite a good starting point. And to take things slightly further, because I read the book and was like, right, I now know I need to start a why, but how the hell do you find it? Now, conveniently, Simon Sinek has another book called Find Your Why. So, I think that was probably planned. But as you had that book as well, didn't you, Simon?
Yes, I do have the book. It's sitting on my shelf, and I've opened the first 3 pages. I think just the first book was enough for me, and then flicking through the second book. Yeah. So, I would definitely recommend it. I flicked through it. I was just too lazy to actually fill it in. But I would tend to agree with what you said. And taking the example of Apple don't try. Their target audience isn't everyone. They don't try and sell to everyone. They've looking at the price of their products, they specifically priced people out of the market. And Apple, without fail, will run out of stock on day 1 or day 2 of their new devices coming out. And this is not. It's what the most valuable or the second most valuable company in the world, and they you should have a reliable supply chain. You're not just going to run out and stuff. So on the back of that, I would say that there's a couple of other books that I would recommend. The first one's by Seth Godin, but I can't remember what it's called. And essentially he explains the concept of having a minimal viable audience, the number of people you need to work out, the number of people you need based on the value that they'll bring to your business. in order to make a viable business, because you're not trying to sell to everyone, and you need to have that target market cornered, where, you know, Apple might, and I perceive Apple's target market to be people who want something that's intuitive, reliable, looks good, makes them feel good, that sort of thing. The other book would be one by Daniel Priestley called Oversubscribed, which again ties into, you know, how do Apple sell out so quickly? It's by having a number of devices, and also accepting that you know, they're going to sell out, which means they might not make sales, but the positive aspect of that is people will queue up the night before, and, you know, just imagine the positive publicity. You know, everyone wants to queue up for an iPhone. Well, I don't. I've got a Samsung, but everyone wants to queue up. A lot of people want to queue up for an iPhone. You know, the night it comes out, and, you know, they'll happily shout from the rooftops that, you know, we've run out of iPhones today. So I think those are a couple of things that will help develop the idea of business. But I think, yes, definitely starting with why is very important. The book Start With Why is a good place to start.
Yeah, perfect. Wrap that up very nicely. Brilliant. So I think we've kind of covered all the bases on for this particular episode. So I just want to sort of do your final thoughts. And so if you can kind of wrap up everything you've kind of talked about, you know, why is it so important that, you know, a future principal starts with why?
Because that's really the foundation of everything that you're going to do in the coming years. Starting with why is the foundation of, you know, how your patient experience is going to be. Because part of your why will be stuff that, you know, you don't like elsewhere, and you want to do the opposite of that. It's also going to be the foundation of how you're going to hire, and on what basis you're going to hire, how you're going to treat your staff, how you're going to pay your staff. You know, if your why is you want to squeeze out as much profit as possible, and you're not, so, you know, and then the way you do your job, the way you do your business, so in our case dentistry, or in your case, or in my case dentistry, in your case marketing and websites, the way you do your job, if you're more interested in, right, I'm going to squeeze out as much money as possible, then that's going to take websites, and I'm not going to do the best fillings. And if that's part of your why, you know, so be it. That's clearly part of lots of people's whys who are in dentistry at the moment. So, you know, and that's going to have an impact on how you're going to hire your staff and what you're going to pay them. Because if you want to try and make as much profit as possible, then you're going to pay them as little as possible, and you're going to spend as little on materials and things like that. So that's why I think it's so important, because it's the essence of what you're going to do. It's going to, you know, that's going to lead on to designing your patient experience. That's going to lead on to designing your systems and, you know, how you talk to people. That's going to lead on to how you hire. That's going to lead on to your branding and how you market yourselves to other people. It's going to lead on to, even in my case, the layout of the practice and how the workflows. So I'm not saying that people need to think about it in this much depth. I think I thought about it in this much depth, but that's a reflection of the kind of person that I am, and other people won't be, and that's fair enough. But for me, it certainly helps knowing or reflecting on what my motivating factors were, and making sure that, you know, everything that I did was almost a checkbox in those motivating factors, from a financial to a patient experience to a quality of dentistry to a team experience. You know, all of these categories, everything I did would have had to tick all of those boxes to fulfill the why.
Brilliant. So I said that would be our final thought, but actually I want to throw a curveball in. Do you think finance and sort of, you know, personal gain is a good enough reason on its own to start a practice? Like to make as much money as possible, is that a good enough reason to start a practice?
I feel like I should say no, but I want to say yes. because there's nothing. This is why businesses exist. It's to, well, this is why I perceive businesses to exist, is ultimately to make a profit, right? If we're in the business of providing the best experience and the best materials and the best, team and all that kind of stuff, well, why don't we just do it as a charity? So the fact that you're in business, I think having a why of just making as much money as possible, then that's not. It's not my position to say whether that's morally correct or ethically correct, but is that a strong enough why? Where it depends on your motivation to make money. If that's your primary motivation, then so be it. As long as you do the other things ethically, then I can't see why I would have a problem with that. But I think people will see through that. And again, just going back to what you said, the phrase that I'm going to get wrong, which is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Did I get it right? Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
People are going to quickly realize that you're doing stuff for money. And if they're okay with that, then so be it. They'll continue buying from you. But I don't think that a lot of people will be okay with that. People will need to see your passion apart from that. And if it is just money, then I would say that there wouldn't be much of a business there. So I think, is there anything wrong with it on the face of it? No. But do I also think that would form a viable business? I'm not sure, because I don't think there's a single business that exists just to make money, and not even Ryanair, for example. I think they do have, I'm not quite sure what it is. Maybe it's just getting people across Europe as cheaply as possible, but that's still a why. I don't think it is just about making money, full stop. Otherwise, I'm sure there are, same with dentistry, I'm sure there are cheaper, lower barriers to entry, less regulated industries to get into. That's what I think. Nice curveball.
Perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, no, I thought I'd throw that in. We didn't have that written down, so I thought just throw that in. And I think you handled it well, so that's brilliant.
Oh, thanks.
Right, I think that was a brilliant episode. It's really great to sort of get a deeper insight and deeper dive into, why you started your practice and why it's important to know that, and obviously a few ways you can go about finding it. So brilliant. I think we'll end it there, and I'll see you on the next podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Cheers, dude. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Growing a Dental Practice. For more insights, please subscribe and do leave us a review so that other people can find us. You can also find us on social media and on our website, growingadentalpractice.com.